How to Write Really Badly by Anne Fine. Read by Richard Mitchley. Chapter 1. Bad News Bear. I'm not a total lame brain, nor am I intergalactically stupid, and I don't go wimp-eyed and soggy-nosed when bad things happen to me. But I confess, as I looked round the dismal swamp that was to be my new classroom, I did feel a little bit cheesy. Oh yes, I was one definite bad news bear. Lovely news, everyone! Miss Tate clapped her hands and turned to the lines of dim bulbs staring at me over their grubby little desks. We have somebody new this term, she said. Isn't that nice? She beamed. And here he is. His name is Howard Chester. Chester Howard, I corrected her. But she wasn't listening. She was busy craning round the room, searching for a spare desk. And I couldn't be bothered to say it again. I reckon she was probably bright enough to pick it up in time, so I just carried my stuff over to the empty desk she was pointing towards in the back row. And that's Joe Gardner beside you, Miss Tate cooed after me. Hi, Gardner Joe, I muttered as I sat down. It was a joke, but he was clearly even more of a bean-brain than Miss Tate. Not Gardner Joe, he whispered. Joe Gardner. I didn't have the energy to explain. Oh, right, I said, and my spirits sank straight in my boots, setting a personal and possibly a world record for getting to hate a new school. I've moved more times than you've watched Sesame Street. I've managed bookish schools and sporty schools and schools where the teachers keep hunkering down to your level to look you in the eye and ask how you really feel. I even managed 4 months at a school where no one else spoke English. But I never took against a place so fast as I took against Wall-Bottle Manor Mixed. Some manor. I reckon the building was designed by someone who was taking a rest from doing morgues and abattoirs. The walls were shiny brown and shiny green. The shiny made it worse. The windows hadn't been washed since 1643, and all the paintings pinned up round the room looked like 8 sorts of pig dribble. But hey, nowhere's perfect. I gave Gardner Joe a nudge. So what's she like? Who? I nodded towards the front. Her, of course. Crock at the top. He stared at me. Miss Tate? She's very nice. My turn to stare. Was my new neighbour touched with the feather of madness or what? Here was this epic windbag droning on and on about whose turn it was to be the blackboard monitor or some other such great thrill, and Gardner Joe was sticking up for her. I knew right away that this was the sort of school where everyone lines up quietly to do something really exciting, like opening the door for a teacher. And if you gave them something wild to play with, like a wobbly chair, they'd probably be happy all through break. I looked at my watch. 6 hours, I muttered bleakly. 6 whole hours. Joe Gardner turned my way. 6 hours till what? Till I can complain to my mother, I explained. Complain? About this place. His face crumpled up in bewilderment. But why complain? And he was right, of course. Why bother to complain? It never gets me anywhere. Marry the woman, marry the job, my father always says. But I didn't marry her. You did, I point out to him. So why should I suffer? It could be worse, he warns. Your mother could get fired. Then we might be stuck here forever. That usually snaps me out of it pretty fast. You'll like it here, this Joe was telling me. We do a lot of art. I stared at the pig dribble pictures. Oh, very nice. And we have fun at break. Watching the puddles dry? Joe's puzzled look came back to take another quick bow, and then he finished up. And we have singing on Fridays. No kidding. Not sure I can wait that long. But this Joe Gardner was turning out to be a bit of a sarcasm-free zone. I feel that way sometimes myself, he said. But wait and see. It'll come round so fast. His eyes shone as if he were talking about his birthday or Christmas. "Singing on Fridays," I said. "Right, I'll remember that when things get grim." And I looked up to see how we were doing with today's great excitement, choosing the blackboard monitor. "So that's agreed then, is it?" Miss Tate was saying. "Flora this week and Ben the week after." I suppose when something of world-shattering importance like this is decided, it's always best to check things one last time. "Everyone happy with that?" I'd have put money on the fact that no dill-brain in the world could give a flying crumpet who was blackboard monitor this week or next. But whoa there! I was wrong, quite wrong. This hand beside me shoots up in the air. "Miss Tate?" "Yes, dear?" "I think it would be nice if Howard—" "Chester," I couldn't help correcting. But he wasn't listening. He was busy fixing my life. "If Howard was made blackboard monitor. Because he's new, and I don't think he's very sure he's going to like it here. Because he's already worked out that it's 6 whole hours." See my eyes pop? But what was staggering me most was that this bozo meant well. He was trying to be kind. "Till he gets home." I flicked on all exterminator rays, but nothing could stop him. He was being nice. "So I think it'd be a really good idea if we made him blackboard monitor." Joe sat back, satisfied. Miss Tate spread her hands like someone glowing in a holy painting. "Flora? Ben? Would you mind?" Surprise, surprise. Ben didn't burst into tears, and Flora didn't gnash her teeth at not being blackboard monitor for one more week. So, that's it. 10 minutes in, and I'm head wiperoonie. What great luck. "Well," Miss Tate said brightly, giving me a meaningful smile, "my blackboard looks as if it could do with a thorough good wiping, just to start the day." I sighed. I stood up. What else could I do? I took the little furry wooden block from Flora's outstretched hand and smiled back sweetly when she smiled at me. I wiped the board, then set the little furry thing carefully on its ledge. "Very good," Miss Tate said. "Excellent. A lovely job." You'd have thought that I'd balanced the budget or something. Modestly, I wiped the chalk dust from my fingertips. "And now let's give Howard a nice big round of applause as he goes back to his desk." I didn't put up any further fight. Chester, Howard, what's in a name? I was a broken reed, ready to slip my head in a noose or walk the plank or do anything I was asked. Don't get the wrong end of the stick. I'm no wimp. I've smacked heads in my time. Young Chester Howard here has stuck up for himself in schools where the pudding plates go flying, and schools where if you don't watch yourself, someone's infected teeth are in your leg, and schools where the staff need cattle prods. But Wall Bottle Manor mixed. Their sheer blood-curdling niceness had defeated me, and I ran up the white flag. Howard it was. Chapter 2. All goody-goody and old-fashioned. You wouldn't believe the playground. Half of these goofballs were wandering round offering their last crisp to anyone who looked in the slightest bit peaky, and the rest were all skipping. No kidding, they were skipping. 2 rosy-cheeked milkmaids in pigtails were swinging this great long rope, and everyone else was jumping up and down, all thrilled to bits, waiting their turn. Then each time someone rushed in under the rope, everyone burst into song. I stood on the steps and listened. First I heard, "Miss Tate bent down to pick a rose so sweet and tender. Alas, alas, she bent too far, and bang went her suspender." And then I heard, "Mandy Frost was a very good girl. She went to church on Sunday to pray to God to give her strength to kiss the boys on Monday." I turned to Joe. "Is this some kind of special day?" He trotted out his puzzled look. "What do you mean?" I didn't quite know how to put it. "What I mean is, are you all pretending to be sweet little orphans or something? Is this some sort of history day?" I wasn't ringing his doorbell, you could tell. "History day?" You know, like when all the girls dress up in pinafores and everyone sits with their arms folded neatly on their desks and the teacher pretends that it's 100 years ago. A light came on in his attic at last. Oh, like when we did our Victorian school day. I shrugged. Whatever. Something all goody-goody and old-fashioned anyhow. He stared round the playground. In one corner, two of the bigger boys were putting their arms round a sobbing toddler who'd lost his pet marble or something. By the porch, boys and girls were practicing a hornpipe. I'm serious. Next to the gates, a gaggle of merrymakers were doing a complicated clapping game. And all the rest were ambling around, smiling and waving to one another, or loyally waiting for friends outside the lavatories. What I mean is, I said, where are we? On the planet Zog? Joe's eyes lit up. Oh, yes, that'd be fun. Let's both be visitors to the planet Zog, and you... I gave him my hardest killer stare. Who did this blint's brain think I was? Some bedwetter keen to play his Betsy-Wetsy games? Listen, I said, I think maybe it's time that I explained something to you. But he'd clapped his hand to his mouth. Oh, Howard, he told me. It'll have to wait till after break, because I've just remembered I promised Miss Tate I'd help her cut the covers for our new how-to books. And just at that moment, the lady herself appeared on the steps. Joey, she warbled. Joey Gardner! Coming, Miss Tate, he trilled, and he was off. I slid my back down against the nearest wall and sank my head in my arms. Oh, just my luck. I'd made my way in schools where the uniform is so itchy it brings you out in hives, and schools where you have to stand and pray 5 times a day, and schools where they make you do your work over and over again until it's right. But never had I fetched up somewhere like this. Already I could hear the scuffling of anxious little feet. Nervously, I looked up and found myself encircled by worried faces. Howard? Are you all right? It's difficult for anyone on their first day. You'll soon get used to us, honestly. Do you want to come and skip? I opened my mouth. I was about to speak. The first words were just rising to my lips when the bell rang. Just as well. Chapter 3. Ugly Stuff. An hour later, Miss Tate explained the whole soul-rotting business again for any beef brains who weren't listening the first 10 times. So here are your lovely covers, which Joe has very kindly helped me to cut to size. Our Joe took his 10th bow. And paper is on my desk, lined here and unlined here. She pointed twice, just in case anyone in the room was so deeply brain-damaged they were going to get in a tizzy searching for something in a space 1 meter by 2. And all of you get to choose what you write about, but it does have to be a little how-to book. So it could be... She pointed to Beth. How to keep rabbits, Beth said promptly and beamed. This wasn't news. We had been through Beth's plans at least a zillion times since we'd trooped in. Or how to... She pointed at some of the crawlers in the front row, and they jumped to it again. How to make a kite. How to start your own candle factory. How to grow mustard and cress. Train your dog. Plan a night's camping in winter. Decorate hard-boiled eggs. I've fallen in some time warp. I know I have. And now Miss Tate is working her way back through the class to me and Joe. She points at him first. Joe, how to... He looks all worried. I haven't thought of anything yet, Miss Tate. Now she looks all worried as well. Howard? I should have answered her. I know I should. But I was too busy stabbing my desk with my pen point and muttering Chester darkly under my breath. Oh, dearie me, she said. It looks to me as if that's 2 of you still without any ideas. Maybe I should run through it one more time. I started to growl, and it was in the balance for a moment till she glanced at the clock. But clearly one small corner of her brain had not yet been steeped to mulch by staff-room tea, because she suddenly had a fresh idea. Why don't I come and talk to you two on your own? I turned the growling up a notch. But old Two-Legs-No-Brain at the next desk looked absolutely thrilled. "She's coming over to help us." He said it the same way you or I might have said free videos for life. I stuck my finger to the side of my head and swiveled it to let him know I thought he was some forlorn turkey. But then a shadow fell across my desk, and there stood Miss Tate in a cloud of moths, beaming at both of us. "So what's it going to be, boys?" "Mine's a secret," I told her. That got her off my back and onto Joe's. She made a steeple of her fingertips. "Now, Joe, isn't there anything that you'd enjoy using the library to learn about?" Joe picked at his fingernails and shook his head. "Well, how about something you've always thought there ought to be a little how-to book about?" Joe was busy recycling his earlier performance as baffled man. "Surely there's something you've always wished you were good at." "Counting to 3 without having to take off your mittens?" I suggested. "Howard!" Miss Tate was shocked, you could tell. She raised an eyebrow you could hatch bald eagles in. But just at that moment, Joe the thimble brain thought of something at last. "I wish I could write more neatly." Miss Tate patted his head as if he were some starved three-legged puppy she'd found in a lost dog pen. "I think we all wish you could do that, Joe." He looked up hopefully. "So, shall I choose it?" "What?" "How to write neatly. I could have a try." "Well, yes, Joe, you could have a try." She didn't sound overly confident. But fired with enthusiasm, he opened his workbook. And suddenly I saw why Miss Tate had had her doubts. This Joe beside me was the writer from hell. I tell you, the day the teachers at Walbottle Manor give gold stars for penmanship away on the roof, this Joseph Gardner will have the stairs to the basement all to himself. "Wowee!" I drew my breath in. "That is ugly stuff." "Howard?" Miss Tate warned. "But no one can stop you staring." The pages in Joe's workbook were clotted black and nasty. A troop of drug-crazed centipedes in leaking ink boots had clearly held a barn dance over most of them. The rest looked tidy in comparison. Not tidy enough to read, just tidy in comparison. "I think we're talking high hopes here," I couldn't help observing to Miss Tate. "Reach for the stars and all that? Writing more neatly is well down our Joey's page of contents if you ask me. I think he ought to stick with learning to write." For all this was happy class, her tone turned pretty frost-topped. "I'll thank you to pipe down, Howard Chester," she said. "Joe here does have the odd little problem with his schoolwork, but he's struggling along manfully." "Manfully?" I snorted. Scruffily and messily more like. Joe flicked back to the pages in the front. "I'm definitely improving," he insisted. "See how much better and neater my work is since I started special lessons twice a week with Mrs. Hooper." I took a look. I looked in the front of the book, and I looked in the back. "That Mrs. Hooper is one brave, brave lady," I observed. Miss Tate said warningly, "I'm losing patience with you, Howard." So I stowed it till she left. Then all I did was watch, as poor cack-handed Joe picked up his pen, gripped it so hard his hand looked like some paralyzed tarantula, and wrote pitifully slowly, "Ho to writ mo netley." "That won't do," I told him. "There's 5 mistakes in that, not to mention the truly dismal standard of penmanship." Joe tried to stick up for himself. "But you can read it, can't you?" "Of a fashion." "It's the best I can do." "Then you're writing the wrong book," I told him patiently. "Always in project work, it's best to trade on your strengths, not on your weaknesses." Joe sighed. "Not sure I have any." If you don't mind, I'm breaking off to make a short public service announcement here. I know when someone says to you, "I'm not sure I have any strengths," you're supposed to pat their paw kindly and say to them, "Of course you do. Everyone has strengths. It's just that some people's are more hidden than others. And some people's don't show up in school." I know you're supposed to say that, okay? It's just that that isn't what I said. What I said was, "Oh, I don't know. You're really good at writing really badly." You want to know my big mistake? I'd said the magic words, "You're really good at." That was my big mistake. Here was this sad case at my side, whose teachers probably hadn't drawn a smiley face at the bottom of his work since he was 3, and I was saying he was really good at something. "Do you think so?" He beamed so wide I thought his face might split. For one grisly moment I feared he would even lean over and hug me. Then it was worry hour again. "But will you help? So tell me, all you big heads out there reading this, what would you have done? Here I am, stuck in Happy Valley School, where everyone is peachy sweet, and this poor dimplehead thinks that I'm being nice like everyone else. I'd like to see you wriggle out of it any better than I did." "Okay," I said. "I'll help." I picked up my pen. I wrote the title in big, clear capitals, so he could copy it onto one of the bits of card he'd spent break cutting to make covers. And copying isn't hard, so he made quite a decent job of it. I won't say it was neat, and there were way too many fingerprints, and he'll take time to crack this business of the backwards E. But I was proud of it, and so was he. You could almost read it. "How to writ really badly by Joe Gardner." After a bit, Miss Tate trills over our way. "So how's it going, Joe?" He sticks his tongue back in his mouth to answer her. "It's going well. Howard is helping me." Now, didn't Miss Tate look pleased at that? "And Howard, how about your own work?" It's still a secret, Miss Tate." "Well, just so long as you're getting on with it." I looked at my nice white cover, on which so far I'd written diddly squat. "Getting along nicely, thanks." She nods away, all happy as a clam. My mother's always saying it, and it's true. Some of these teachers are so away with the fairies, they should be put right out to grass. Chapter 4. Trash or Treasure? I would have found it easier to work in a street riot. You wouldn't believe the noise Joe Gardner made trying to write. His pen clattered to the floor 10 times a minute. He said sorry half a dozen times whenever he stabbed me with his elbow. And every few seconds he lifted his desk lid and rooted through the garbage inside. It was like sitting next to a giant gerbil. "What's the matter?" I asked finally. He turned his worried face in my direction. "What do you mean?" I tried the question round another way. "Why aren't you working?" "I am working. You can see I'm working." "No," I said, "I can't see you working. All I can see is you knocking things off the desk and flapping your paper and lifting your desk lid every 10 seconds to stir up the mess inside." "Well, I am working." "You've got nothing done." And it was true. So far he'd managed ick, yo, ore. I felt a little brutal. He looked crushed. "What is that anyway?" I asked. "What?" "What you've written." "Can't you read it?" I gave it my best shot. "Ick, you, or?" He sighed so heavily I knew I'd got it totally wrong. I tried again. "Ick, if." My turn to stare. "If?" He pointed. "That's an F." "In your dreams?" "Be fair," he argued. "That is definitely an F." "And I'm a wombat." His face dropped. "Well, that's why I was looking in my desk. Somewhere I've got a special sheet of paper with a lot of words written out for me." I peered into the dark abyss that was Joe Gardner's desk. "How could you ever find one special sheet of paper in that tip?" Flushing, he tried to defend himself. "I'm looking for my dictionary as well." I dipped a finger in and gingerly stirred a few mucky papers about. "No sign of any books in here." "Maybe it's sunk to the bottom." "Why don't you clear it out, for heaven's sake? Then you'd be able to find things." He said unhappily, "I do try. It's just—" His voice trailed off. It didn't matter, though. I didn't really need telling. I'd seen him take 1,000,000 years to try to write 3 words. If someone like Joe tried clearing his desk, he'd have a beard down to his feet before the job was done. I pushed my blank how-to book cover aside. "All right," I sighed. "Let's get on with it."
"But we're supposed to be—"
I didn't stop to listen. I just punted up the front to fetch the waste paper bin. Miss Tate's beady eye fell on me the moment I stretched under her desk. "Howard?" "Just borrowing the bin," I explained. "But Howard, that bin's for everyone." I think what I hate most about being in school is being treated like a half-wit. "Yes, I do understand," I said, "but right at this moment, Joe and I need it most, because he can't get down to work until we've cleared out his desk and found his dictionary." A strange light flickered in her eyes. "Cleared out Joe Gardner's desk?" I think I got the look right. I think my expression clearly said, "Yes, lady, you get the paycheck, I do all the work." No more trouble from her, then. I carried my trophy back and planted it on the floor beside Joe's desk. Then I pointed to my chair. "You sit there." He shifted over, putty in my hands. "Right," I said, lifting out the first disgusting sheet of chicken scratchings. "Trash or treasure?" "Trash," he admitted. I lifted another. "Trash or treasure?" "Trash. This is my mother's trick. She uses it on me 3 times a year before my grandmother's visits." "What about these?" "Trash, trash, trash, trash." It took a while. I had to keep putting my foot in the bin to stamp the rubbish down and make more room. But gradually we worked our way down all the tides of rubbish in his desk. And once or twice we had a nice surprise. "Treasure! I lost that £1 weeks ago." Or, "My dental appointment card. Mum's been nagging me for that." And suddenly a triumph. "Hey, that's my special sheet of paper." "Take a break." I strolled across to Flora. "Borrow your sticky tape?" Miss Tate had spotted me. "Howard," she trilled, "we don't go wandering in this class without putting up our hands first to ask permission. What is it with teachers and this stupid we business? Miss Tate had been rolling round the room all morning and never once put up her hand." "Gosh, sorry," I warbled and scuttled back with Flora's tape in hand. I used a lot. No point in messing about. I stuck that special sheet of paper on the desk so well it wouldn't go walkabout again. And I took a look at it. Once, knew, called, guess, ready, caught, night, garden, school, hospital, break, doing, that sort of thing. And maybe I was in a mood because I hadn't had time to get started on my own work. "Oh, right," I muttered. "All the really hard words." Joe lifted his face. "That's right," he said gratefully. "All the words where it's easy to make mistakes." So I admitted. Though I didn't smirk, I was still feeling pretty superior as we ploughed through the silt at the bottom of his desk. "Trash or treasure?" "Trash." Into the bin. "And this?" He reached for it in relief. "My dictionary." "Just try to keep it near the top in future." Miss Tate could take lessons from me. "Is that the lot?" He took the last thing I was holding up. "Trash." He dropped it in the bin and was about to put his foot on it when I reached down and snatched it. "What's this?" "It's just a photograph." "I know it's a photograph, bean brain," I told him sharply, "but what is it?" He shrugged. "It's just a model that I made last year." "Just a model?" I inspected it. Then I inspected him. "Excuse me," I said, "but may I ask you a very personal question? If you can make a 3-meter model of the Eiffel Tower from macaroni, why can't you keep your desk tidy?" "I don't know." "Well, I'm sure I don't." I was still staring at him when the bell rang. I hadn't got any work done, but I'd achieved something. I'd shifted a major health hazard in the next desk. I'd got to know the worst writer in the world, and I'd worked out he wasn't daft. Not bad for my first morning, you'll admit. Chapter 5. quieter around here. I soon found out why he'd been sitting alone before I showed up to take the last desk. Come silent reading time, my hand spent more time flapping in the air than turning pages. "Miss Tate, Joe's sounded outs are getting on my nerves." "He's driving me mad, Miss Tate. No one could read against his mutterings." "I've read exactly 4 pages, exactly 4. Each time he starts up, I have to go back to the top of the page." Miss Tate laid down her marking pen. "Joe, please try and do your sound-it-outs more quietly." He went even redder than he was before. "I am. You'd practically need an ear trumpet to hear me, Miss Tate." "Howard can hear you well enough." "I most certainly can," I burst out. "K-a-t, cat, d-o-g, dog." "That isn't fair," said Joe. "I'm reading about camels." When I got home that night, I asked my dad, "What's wrong with him anyway? How can he have enough of a head full of brains to walk and talk, and not be able to write would and could without making 80 mistakes?" "Wiring," my dad said darkly. "Faulty wiring. A bit like that flat we rented in Rio." I nearly died in a fire in that flat, so next day back at school I made an effort to be more sympathetic. "Look," I said, "either you get your act together a bit or I will murder you. Which is it to be?" "I try," he said. "I really try. It's just that some things don't stick." "It's not as if you're stupid," I complained. "If you were stupid, we'd know where we stand." "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I got the feeling he'd been saying it since he was born. "Oh, never mind," I snapped. "I'll work something out." And some of the things I worked out went quite well. That afternoon I tackled should, along with would and could. Start it with one of your ghastly little sound-it-outs, and then remember "Oh, you little darling" for the end. "Oh, you little darling?" O-U-L-D. Brilliant! Then his face fell. "But how do I remember which words it works on, Howard?" "Try putting them in a rhyme." And suddenly it was drama night at the next desk. Joe Gardner was pulling an imaginary cloak around his shoulders, twisting his face into an evil leer, and saying to me cruelly, "Oh, you little darling, you know you would if you could, and you should." I pushed him off smartly. He fell on the floor. "I hope you two aren't distracting one another," called Miss Tate. We kept our heads down for a bit. I tried to get on with my work, but over and over my eyes were drawn to Joe's How to Write Really Badly book. I tell you, this boy works like a duck with a shovel. It's so horrible you have to watch. And after about 1 billion false starts, he'd only got this far. "If you are trying to write really badly, you shouldn't use an gz." I pointed to the last big filthy smudge. "What's this supposed to mean?" "Efficient," he said bravely, but he was worried, you could tell. "Backward ease," I warned. He fixed the ease. "Now is it right?" "Oh no," I told him. "We're still miles from home." Sadly, he crossed it out and wrote good above it. "Why did you do that?" "I always end up having to use the easy words I can get right." "You can't do that. People will think you're a half-wit." "A lot of them think that anyway." "Well, that won't do, will it?" I sat and thought for a while, and then, "I've got it. ICI is an efficient company. So you can remember that." "Why?" "Because," I said triumphantly, writing it down in the big baby letters I'd already learned to use for him, "it sorts out the difficult middle bit. EFFICIENT. He stared at it for a while, then, "Got it." Maybe he had, Maybe he hadn't. He'd be the last to know. In grim fascination, I watched his slow, scruffy progress down the page, till the bell rang for lunch. "Goody," he said, stuffing things in his bag. "Time to go home." "But we haven't had the afternoon yet." "Oh." His face did fall, but I can't say he looked all that surprised. And later, when it really was time to go home, he looked surprised all over again. "He has no sense of time at all," I told my dad. "If you ask him the days of the week, he'll reel them off all right. But even if someone told him it was Tuesday yesterday, he still won't realize that it's Wednesday today." My father tossed chopped onion in the pan. "How is he on the months?" "He says he knows them, but he misses out November." "You get to Christmas sooner, I suppose. And what about the alphabet?" "I don't know." "Ask him tomorrow." So I did. He had to sing it, but he sang it perfectly. By G, I'd started conducting. And when he finished with a flourish on X, Y, Z, I said to him, "If you know your alphabet as well as that, how come you have to spend the best part of a week riffling through your dictionary to find the letter you're after?" "Singing's different," I reported back that night. He says that singing's different. And while my dad chopped parsley for the salad, I did my imitation of Joe Gardner scouring the dictionary for the letter W. My dad looked up from the chopping board. "Show you a trick?" He took the dictionary from me. "What do you bet that I can't turn to the M's in one go?" "Nothing," I said. "I'm not stupid." He opened the dictionary and showed me a page full of M words. "Very good." "And what do you bet me I can't find the D's?" "Nothing." He opened the book again, in the middle of the D's. "Excellent." "Bet me I can't find the S's in one go?" "I'm hanging on to my money." Just as well. He opened to the S's in one go. He went back to his salad. I opened the dictionary, looking for E, and landed on F. Then I tried B, and landed on A. "So how did you do that?" I asked him finally. "Old trick," he said. "But it's a new dictionary." "It works with all dictionaries," he said. "Open it right in the middle, and you're in the M's." I tried it. He was right. "Now try exactly halfway to the end again." 3/4 through. "That's right. You'll land on S." I did. Then I tried the first quarter, and I landed on D. "Works every time," he told me. I'm impressed. Not half as impressed as Joe was the next day. "Do you realize that now you'll only have to riffle through 1/4 of the dictionary each time you want to find a word?" I told him. "So I will." He tried it, humming his little alphabet song under his breath. "It works." "Of course it works." "You are so clever, Howard." "Thank my dad." Miss Tate interrupted our little festival of praise. "Shouldn't you two be getting on with your work?" Joey was radiant. "Oh, really? We are." He might be, I suppose. I haven't actually got any work done since I came. My how-to book is still a total blank. But now he won't be riffling and humming quite so much. I suppose there's hope. At least it's getting quieter around here. Chapter 6. Why are you torturing him like this? Within a week or two, I got his sloppy bag-packing down to an art. "So, where are we going now?" He'd look at everyone rushing through the door, brandishing their gym stuff. "To games?" Sherlock II, this boy. "So what do you need?" He wasn't allowed to say it until he had it safely out of his locker into the bag. "Sneakers, shorts, T-shirt, socks." Then off we'd go to games. Not that there was much point. He wasn't very good at them. I'm being nice here. Joe was terrible at games. He was so bad that even Miss Tate's pack of goody two-shoes had to grit their teeth not to groan aloud if he ended up on their team. And he was terrible at maths as well. Whatever page of problems Miss Tate gave out to him, he'd sit there fidgeting and sighing till my nerves were in tatters. "So what's the matter now?" "I don't get it." "What don't you get?" I don't know why I bothered. I might as well have asked someone who was stone deaf, "What can't you hear?" I just don't get it. Why should I work myself into a frazzle for free? Miss Tate gets paid for it. "Miss Tate! Miss Tate! Joe's stuck again." You have to hand it to the lady. She did her best. Day after day she'd haul the coloured rods and blocks over to his desk and set them out and go through the problems again. "So, Joe, let's take it step by step. This block here is worth 100? She'd shake her head. 1,000? No. Think, Joe. We went through this only yesterday. 10 then. Third guess lucky. Not that there was much left to choose. But still, Miss Tate managed to crank the enthusiasm up into overdrive. "That's right, Joe. So if we don't have enough of the red blocks to drone, 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 drone." Joe tried. He'd nod and carry on answering her step-by-tiny-step questions one by one. But there was no point in it. None of it took. The moment she walked away, he couldn't remember the right questions to ask himself to get to the answer. He couldn't understand. And all the blocks and rods cluttering his desk were baffling him as much as the numbers that confused him in the first place. "I reckon only the people who can do it in the book can do it with the rods and blocks," he grumbled to me once. "Spotted it right away, Joe." "So what's the point?" I shrugged. "Search me." Sometimes, just for a rest, she'd give him something he knew how to do, and still he'd get it wrong. I'd lean across to sort him out and find he'd copied out the question wrong. This writing backwards business had crept into his numbers. "You're supposed to be multiplying by 13, not 31. Am I?" He'd spend 10 minutes finding his place on the worksheet. "So I am." Not that he'd even get the answer after that. His next mistake was usually to copy the right number into the wrong column, so his tens turned into hundreds and his hundreds turned into thousands. He'd go through the sum 4 times over to be sure, then, "Have I made any mistakes at all in the adding?" I'd check for him. "No, no mistakes in the adding." "So it's right?" "I'm afraid not." And I'd call Miss Tate over yet again with all her rods and blocks to try and explain. One day I asked her, "Why are you torturing him like this?" Miss Tate looked hurt and horrified.
"Torturing him? Howard, what on earth do you mean? I was just asking Joe if he understands."
"But Joe doesn't know if he understands.
Maybe he'll get to it suddenly.
Some people do." She turned her back on me.
"So, Joe," she said patiently, "let's try this one again. We start in this column, don't we? So what's 7 times 8?
We wait forever. And then, at last, because Joe can lip-read Beth, the answer comes.
56?
Miss Tate was thrilled.
Excellent, Joe.
1 mini-microsecond later, she's asking him,
"And what's 8 times 7?
And he's back to picking miserably at his fingertips.
"Come on, Joe, you just did it." "Did I?" "Yes." "When?" "Just now. You told me 7 times 8 is 56. "But I thought you wanted 8 times 7 now." "Joe, they're the same."
He fakes it well enough, slaps on his bright, "I think I've got it now" face, and she pretends she's fooled, because that's her job. But I don't have to act the idiot.
"See? You're just torturing him. If he hasn't even grasped that 7 eighths is the same as 8 sevens, how can you start him on fractions? It's not fair." "They're very easy fractions."
"Thumb screws are gentle compared with the Iron Maiden, I expect."
"Howard!"
She's getting cross with me, I can tell. But I'm cross with her. How can she carry on week after week, acting as if deep down inside, if she could only reach it, Joe's brain is just like mine or hers? Why can't she see his clockwork doesn't tick like ours?
"He's getting a lot more right these days, aren't you, Joe?"
"That's just because Howard's helping me."
"I'm sure it isn't."
"Yes, it is," I said.
"Howard, it's true,"
I insist.
Joe gets along all right, but only by bluffing and guessing and mind-reading you and lip-reading Beth and getting answers from me.
I'm sure that's not true.
Ask him, if you feel lucky.
She doesn't dare. She simply turns on her heel, and I know what I said hit home, because when she gets to her desk, she wheels round on me and says, her face scarlet, "I think perhaps I ought to move you, Howard." Joe's wail is pitiful.
"Oh, no, Miss Tate, don't separate us, please. I like sitting next to Howard. He's a great help to me."
She doesn't push it. But later, when the bell rings, she takes my arm and draws me aside.
"I think maybe you'd do a whole lot better, Howard Chester, if you took less interest in other people's work and more in your own."
She had a point, for when I opened my how-to book to prove her wrong, it was still a blank. Chapter 7. The Golden Rules. "Today," I told him, "I'm getting on with my own work."
"Just start me off first," he pleaded.
"No," I said. "I have to get on myself. Once I start with you, there's never any stopping." So, sadly, he set off in his brutish handwriting across the page.
"People who writ really badly."
It's no good. I can't concentrate. I lay down my pen and slide the new photographs he's brought in to show me out of their envelope. "I've said this before," I told him, "and I shall probably say it again. I don't understand how someone who can stuff 18 jumbo-sized models into one tiny bedroom without breaking any of them can't copy one word without losing his place 500 million times." I glanced at his work again. "Or 6 words in a row without falling off the edge of the paper." He'd gone off onto the desk in the middle of the word badly. I touched his hand. "Are these the fingers that built that 3-meter Eiffel Tower out of spaghetti?" "Macaroni." "Whatever." I tapped his head. "Is this the brain that worked out how to make his sister's Halloween mask flash orange and green? Is this the same boy who stuffed all the speaker wires back in the right holes when Ben Bergonzi put his great hoof through them?" "That's different," he said sadly. "I don't have to learn wires and glue and stuff." I shook my head. "You're in the wrong place," I told him. "You shouldn't be here. It's just sapping your confidence. You ought to be trailing behind someone who builds bridges, or invents light displays for famous bands on tour, or bugs other people's telephones." "I'd like that." "Never mind," I said. "Only," I did a rapid calculation in my head, "only about 1,646 days to go." He looked up, interested. "Till when?" "Till you can switch to doing what you're good at." Wistfully, he stared at the photos spread across the desk. 1,646 days. I glanced at my watch. "And this one's slipping away pretty sharpish," I warned. "So pick up your pen and get your own personal little knucklehead show back on the road." "I'm stuck." "Just have a go. No one's expecting you to win any prizes." "I won one once," he said proudly. "Really?" I wasn't really listening, for suddenly, right then and there, I'd worked out exactly what to do with my own empty how-to book, down to the very last page. But he was determined to tell me. "Yes, I won a prize 2 years ago at the summer fair." He looked so proud that even though I was desperate to get on with my idea, I couldn't help asking him, "Which prize?" "The prize for the boy who could keep his head in a hole longest while people threw wet sponges at him." "Okay, then," I admitted. "I'm not a stone. I have a heart. And I have heartstrings, too. And my little underachieving deskmate had just twanged them so hard they almost burst." "Righto," I said, picking up my pen. "I'll help you." And pushing my own how-to book aside, I started off on his. To write really badly, in Joe's chicken-scratching style, you'll need some paper, any grubby old scrap will do, and a pen that makes terrible blotches. Look for a lumpy place to work. Rocks and laps are good, but runaway buses are better. Sit exactly right. Slouch to one side and stick out your legs on both sides. Make sure you're in poor light or can't see what you're doing over a pile of books. Grip the pen so hard your knuckles go all white, and make sure you've twisted your hand round till you're almost writing upside down. I don't do that, do I? Yes, you do. It's very important not to write any letter of the alphabet the same way twice. A really bad writer can make the same letter look completely different twice in the same word. Example. I handed him the pen. Go on then, do the example. Me? I'm rotten at examples. You know that. I always get them wrong. You're the only one who can get this one right. Really? His eyes lit up. What shall I write? Write pancake, I told him. That has 2 letters the same in it, if you spell it right. He spelt it right because I told him how. Example. P-A-N-K-A-K-E. Beautiful, I said. Perfect. See what I mean? Always trade on your strengths. You'd never think those 2 A's were the same letter. So, can I do all the examples? No one else but you. The next day, we did capitals. The ones at the top were neat as anything, neat as print. The ones at the bottom looked like lines of drunks at a bus stop. Guess which of us wrote the examples on the top. Right. You can use capital letters to start people's names and new sentences. But if you're trying to write really badly, you won't bother. And try making some of your capitals smaller than little letters. That'll fool people. The day after that, we did small letters. The ones at the top were as neat as anything, neat as print. The ones at the bottom looked like a load of baby cockroaches fighting in a playpen. Guess which of us wrote the bottom ones. Write again. To save time and effort, of course, the end of one letter can be used as the start of the next. And don't worry, you'll soon learn which letters don't matter at all and can be left out completely. The next day, we did special exercises. Don't ever try to write 2 letters together the very same height, and always make sure your tall letters slope in funny directions. Also, try not to use lined paper, because if you're trying to write really badly, the last thing you want is everything neatly on one level. Example. Paint. Wrong. Paint. Right. And we did numbers too. How about making your 5 look like a letter S, or your 6 like an O? Remember that really important numbers should be smudged. And for a nice change, why not write half the number as a word and the rest as a number? Example. 30-I. 31. This could easily be taken for 30 with an exclamation mark. I thought it was important to cover dotting I's and T's. The golden rules for dotting are 1. Don't give a dot to anything that should have one. 2. Put it a few letters away in either direction. Always make sure that you have more dots than you need. The extra dots should be scattered just anywhere over the page of writing. Then we went home. After the weekend, we started on punctuation. Too much punctuation is fussy and unattractive. Forget about question marks and exclamation marks, and be very mean indeed with commas. But you can sprinkle full stops anywhere in the sentence, except at the end. And Joe did us a beautiful sprinkly example. And then, just to finish it all off neatly, we did spacing and layout. Always go right to the very edge of your paper, even if you fall off. Any bright reader will be able to guess what your last word was going to be. Example. After you have a bath, you are quit. If you are sitting right, your work should slope right up or down the page. Don't worry about paragraphs. Esteemed chicken scratchers never worry about paragraphs. I handed the pen to Joe. Now write good luck to finish. Out popped the old tongue, and he wrote, good look. Then he studied the last bit more carefully. What's esteemed? Respected, honoured, famous for something. So, Joe said, much taken with all this example stuff he'd been so good at over the last few days, we could say, example, Joe Gardner is esteemed for writing really badly. No way around this one. We most definitely could. Chapter 8. A Little Secretive One-Person Crime Wave. Now Joe was finished with his own work, he started taking an interest in mine. Why are you sitting like that, all twisted round? Are you trying to write really badly? No, I'm just hiding my work from you. Why? Because it's a secret. He was hurt. I'll get to see it anyway, on open day. But not till then. He shrugged. Then Mr. Hurt turned into Mr. Worrywart. It must be hard for you, writing bent round like that. You manage perfectly well. But I'm used to it. His eyes lit up. I know. I'll make you a screen. He did, too. The very next day, he brought in a brilliant screen he'd made out of cornflake packets. It folded neatly when it wasn't up and fitted in his desk. But whenever Miss Tate said, "Time to get on with your how-to books," he'd take it out and set it up between the two of us, lowering the flattened lavatory roll stabilizing flaps and swinging the empty cassette case stability buttresses round into place. And it did the job perfectly. He couldn't see. Wonderful, I said gratefully. That is so much easier. Miss Tate wasn't quite so keen on it, you could tell. Must you two have all this junk cluttering up your desks? It's my security screen, I told her. It helps me work. She sighed. I suppose I should just be thankful you started at last. Started? Why, I was working like a fiend. I spent every hour I could checking my calculations, ruling perfect lines, and making sure my number work was flawless. Joe sat beside me, fiddling with the scraps of cardboard and string and glue under the desk whenever Miss Tate wasn't looking in his direction, and worrying about me all the rest of the time. Do you think you'll be finished by open day? I most certainly hope so. I wasn't sure, though, so I took it home and worked on it while Dad was making supper. What on earth is that? This is my project, I told him. It's a how-to book. Oh, yes? How to what? Survive in school. I saw him staring. It's a present for Joe. Dad wiped the pizza dough off his fingers and flicked through the pages I'd done. This isn't proper work. All this is a heap of numbered squares. It isn't just any old heap of numbered squares, I said. By the time open day comes round, in that book there will be exactly one beautifully measured, numbered square for every single day that poor Joe Gardner still has to spend in school. Dad turned to the last page, roughed out in soft pencil. 1,646. We're really down to 1,638 now, I admitted. But still, I thought it would be nice for Joe to cross a good few off right at the start. That's all it's for Joe to cross them off. Or fill them in with coloured pens. Dad was appalled. But what's the point? It'll make him feel better. All prisoners do it. It helps them get to the end of their sentence without going out of their minds. But Joe's not in prison. He's in Wall-Bottle Manor, mixed. He might as well be in prison. In fact, if he was in a prison, he'd have a better time. He'd enjoy fixing all the sewing machines they use to make mail bags and inventing weird things for picking locks. Dad started thumping his pizza dough really hard. School's not a chain gang, he protested. It's a worthwhile journey of the mind to a valuable destination. Tell that to Joe, I scoffed. To him, school is just somewhere he has to go because they make him. And when he gets there, they just nag at him all day for doing everything wrong. Dad stabbed my how-to book with doughy fingers. I reckon he won't be the only one being nagged the day Miss Tate sees this. I didn't argue with him. I was too sure he was right. But I still kept on ruling out my perfect squares each time Miss Tate told us to get on with our projects. And sometimes, even when she told us to stop.
Pens down. It's time to plan the class displays for open day.
Jo gave me a nudge.
You have to put your pen down now.
Nonsense, I told him, carrying on ruling squares. Old Frosttop will never notice. But old Frosttop did.
Howard, you're last to put down your pen, so I'm afraid you'll have to run a little errand for me.
Oh, joy, I'm out of here for 5 whole minutes. But as I pass, everyone looks sorry for me, as if they think she's punishing me too hard. One thing you can be sure of, none of these wimpettes spent wet afternoons sticking pins in their dollies. Off I go. I whistle up the corridor, around the bend, past the assembly hall, and into the secretary's office. No one is there. The list I'd come to fetch is lying on the table, though. Miss Tate's class, list of open day prizes. And then a heap of dreary crud-bucket honours. Best spelling, best essay, best reading, best how-to book, best number work. No prizes for Jo in there. And then an idea struck. I snatched the scissors from the secretary's desk and snipped off the bottom line. Whoops, sorry Beth, no prize this year. And at the top, very carefully, I printed out, Best Homemade Model. Then I went strolling back. Miss Tate was busy fighting a tragic avalanche of window display and barely glanced at it. Just stick it up where everyone can see it. I prized a pin out of the pig dribble painting I hated most and watched with satisfaction as it peeled off the wall and fell in the bin. There, I said, using the pin. I now declare this class's list of prizes officially on display. A second avalanche fell on Miss Tate, and what with her sticky tape rolling away under the desks, and all the fuss about what sort of glue she ought to use to stick the photo of Ben's mother's stuffed owl Patricia onto the nature display, nobody even noticed my own little secretive one-person crime wave. Chapter 9. Mad Model Movers, plc. My mum put up a fight. In case you hadn't noticed, the firm I work for is called High Technicon Systems, not Huge Wobbly Models Removals Incorporated. Jo's models aren't wobbly, I told her. He's an expert. Chester, it costs a fortune just to keep that van idle on the tarmac. Think how much it would cost to send it on your little errand. It won't take long. Loading and unloading. I'll arrange all that. Moodily, she poked at her pasta. I was winning. Do this one thing for me, I said, and I won't moan about any school I'm in ever again. Dad's eyes lit up. Close the deal this minute, he ordered Mum. Close the deal instantly or it's divorce. Mum closed the deal. She made a couple of phone calls, and that was that. The van showed up outside Mrs. Gardner's house early the next day. We've come for all Jo's models, I told the cleaning lady, for the open day display. Eye lighting up time is getting earlier and earlier around this neighbourhood. What, all of them? All of them, I said firmly. Even the wall-sized Cook Tagliatelle spider's web? Yes, I said, and the disposable plastic coffee cup spaceman, and the fully spinnable tin bottle-top Wheel of Fortune, and the personally collected driftwood crocodile. The cleaning lady trembled. So I'd be able to get in and vacuum under the bed, and wipe down the windowsill, and wash the walls. The room will be all yours, as empty as a summer desert drain till 4 o'clock. Just lead the way. She stopped tremulously halfway up the stairs. Will you be taking the dried bread lampshade? Yes, we'll be taking that too. She clutched her light bulb duster tightly in her emotion. Just along here. I wouldn't want to pass much time in little Joey's bedroom. I wouldn't mind picking my way under the toilet roll holder flying rocket, or through the papier-mâché Valley of the Kings, but I just hate sleeping directly underneath that filled plastic water bottle mastodon. or waking up to put my feet by accident onto that jelly-filled freezer bag octopus. "Is that the lot?" the driver asked when I'd filled up the van. Joe's mother's cleaning lady wiped what I could only take to be a tear of joy out of her eye.
"You promised me they won't be back till 4 o'clock.
"No chance," the driver said, putting the van in gear. "You might think this is Mad Model Movers PLC, but actually I have a regular day job." It's my belief that in the rarefied high-technicon world, sarcasm passes for humour. Joe's mother's cleaning lady raised her mop in warm salute as we drove off. The driver turned to me. "Where next?" "Warbottle Manor, mixed." "I used to go to that school," the driver said, running his gnarled fingers through his silvery hair. "I had a really nice teacher called Miss Tate." "That figures," I told him. "Can we drive round the back?" He knew the way. In fact, I'll swear I saw his rheumy eyes mist over as we passed the old school sign. He backed the van up to the fire doors beside the gym. "I don't believe that you can open these doors from the outside," I warned him. "That's what you think," he said, sliding a spectacle arm in a gap in the doors and springing some catch. "I used to break back in here regularly after I left, to get to sing on Fridays." This is what happens when you get a town without a bowling alley or a cinema. Everyone goes loopy. He helped me carry the models along the corridor, past the big hall where everybody's eyes were goody-goody shut for prayers, into the classroom. "It looks just the same." "I'm sure it does." And we set everything up. How Joe got all this lot in one small room, I'll never understand. They did fit in, but the huge water bottle mastodon loomed horribly over Miss Tate's desk, and Beth's Angora rabbit, borrowed for the textures table, eyed the wall-sized tagliatelle spider's web with real dismay. "Splendid," said the van driver. "A job well done." He patted his own particular favourite, the tin can baby elephant, with evident satisfaction. "And this is sturdy stuff. I've moved top-of-the-range high-technicon systems that'll fall apart sooner than this. Joe only uses the best glue and string." He glanced round wistfully and sighed. "I'd better go." "It isn't Friday," I consoled him, "so at least you won't be missing singing." He hesitated at the classroom door, looking back one last time. "I spent the happiest days of my whole life inside this room." See what I mean? Spend one term with Miss Tate, and you go bats. Quite bats. Chapter 10. By Popular Request. Miss Tate's bun shook as she clapped her hands. I watched for moths. "Now, class." They sat smartly in their seats, like doggies waiting for bones. "I hope everyone's got over the surprise of all these—" Nervously, she glanced up at the huge water bottle mastodon towering above her, gnashing his cardboard teeth. "All these wonderful models that Joe has so kindly brought in to show us today. I didn't I stepped on Joe's foot to shut him up. "Because," Miss Tate went on, "it's time to award the prizes." She opened her desk drawer and brought out 5 rusty-looking medals she'd obviously bought cheap in bulk back in the Stone Age when she started teaching. As soon as I saw them, I realized that the van driver had had one exactly the same dangling from his rear-view mirror. But in the hoo-ha of the move, I'd taken it for a St. Christopher. "We'll start from the bottom, as we always do." She unpinned the list from the wall. "Best how-to book." Believe it or not, this went to the hard-boiled egg decorator in the front row. "Best reading." That should have gone to me. I always win best reading, whichever school I'm in. But I'd blown it this time, because I hated our reading together book, 6 Little Peppers and How They Grew, so much that each time she'd made me stand and read, I'd hung my head and pawed the ground in my embarrassment and mumbled so softly that she couldn't hear. So I didn't get that one this year. Missed my big prize. "Best essay." Flora, of course. She came to fetch her chipped old medal with a beam on her face, stared at it meaningfully as it lay rusting in the palm of her hand, and then started one of those ghastly telly speeches.
The first person I'd like to thank today is my
Miss Tate cut her off pretty sharpish. I certainly hope no one helped you with the winning essay, Flora.
That was supposed to be all your own work.
Flora shut up then and went back to her desk.
Best spelling.
This one was a toss-up, I reckoned. I usually get spelling as well, but Ben was pretty good.
Ben,
Miss Tate announced.
Though Howard might have won if he'd not had so much Hungarian goulash spattered over his book that I couldn't read some words.
This is what comes of doing homework at home.
And the last prize.
Miss Tate was beaming at Beth now. Beth beamed back at her.
Best
I coughed. She tried again.
Best number
I coughed again, even louder. She glanced down at the list.
Good heavens,
she said.
I knew there was going to be an extra prize this year, but I never realized that there'd been a change.
She read aloud from the list.
Best homemade model.
And all hell let loose.
The spider's web, shrieked Beth.
No, the mastodon.
How can you say that? Ben cried. That baby elephant is better than any of the others. I'd swap everything I own for that lovely Wheel of Fortune,
Flora said wistfully.
I've become rather fond of the octopus, I admitted. Does that lampshade made of dried bread count? The spaghetti tower. It's not
Miss Tate cut me off, frowning at everybody.
I do think that after all the work we did on Egypt last year, a few more of you might appreciate this beautiful papier-mâché scale model of the Valley of the Kings.
My big mistake, of course, was writing Best Homemade Model instead of Best Homemade Model Maker. So the wrangling went on for hours while Joe sat in a daze. And in the end, we took a vote. The disposable coffee cup spaceman won by miles. And Joe stepped up to take his medal with a grin as wide as the mastodon's.
Congratulations, Joe.
Miss Tate pressed the dingy old medal into his hand. He gazed at it as if it were some twinkling jewel. Then, closing his fingers round it and shutting his eyes from sheer rapture, he threw his arms around Miss Tate and hugged her.
Joe, you old silly Billy,
she said, but you could tell that she was thrilled to bits.
I knew you had hidden talents, and now I know what they are. I'll be coming to you whenever I need models to explain the maths.
I nudged him as he sat down.
See, I crowed. Things are looking up already. If you're busy making pyramids and cones and tetrahedrons for her all the time, she won't be able to spend so much time torturing you into understanding them.
His grin got even wider. Now Miss Tate was patting the moths back into her bun.
It must be time to welcome our open day visitors.
Her hand was on the doorknob before Joe reminded her.
But, Miss Tate, what about the extra prize?
She turned back.
Whoops! Nearly forgot.
She took another medal from her drawer.
And now, she said, by popular request and secret vote, the extra prize for the most helpful member of the class.
And she looked straight at me. I went for Beth on this one, so I waited, and waited, and waited. And finally Miss Tate said,
Well, aren't you going to come up and get it?
Me?
Who else am I looking at?
Stupidly, considering that Joe and I sit in the back row, I glanced behind me.
I mean you, she said.
Me? I said again.
Most helpful person in the class. Me. I was a little surprised myself, she admitted, but this was a free vote, and all the papers except one had your name on them.
I looked around at them. They were all sitting good as gold, looking at me with innocent, glowing faces. I felt a bit suspicious as I went up to the front. But the medal Miss Tate pressed in my hand didn't explode or blow a raspberry at me or shoot a jet of water in my face. It was a real prize.
No kidding.
A real prize. Don't think I'm not used to getting them, because I am. In his time, Chester Howard has won prizes all over the world for reading, writing, spelling, and once for the most beautifully spoken Armenian nursery rhyme. That was a fluke. But I've never won a prize for any of those other things. Most popular member of the class, best team worker, most cheerful pupil, or any of that nice personality stuff. I stared at the medal. Most helpful person in the class. Frankly, I've been in schools where the most helpful person could mean the one who didn't spit on your homework every day, or set fire to your tennis shoes, or beat you up. In Spike City Juniors, it would probably mean the one who threw your crutches to you, not at you, or helped you bury most bodies. But here in Walbottle Manor, mixed, it was like winning an Olympic gold. These people weren't sinners. They were good, and nice, and kind, and pretty helpful themselves. I couldn't help it. I knew that I was doing a bit of a Beth act, but the words popped out. I'm going to treasure this. Miss Tate gave me a little affectionate push, and I went back to my seat. As I threaded my way between the desks, I noticed that on every one there was a tiny homemade model, Joey style. Robots and scarecrows and rockets, that sort of thing. Have you been buying me votes? I asked suspiciously when I got back. Why should I buy you votes? I didn't know that you were making me that brilliant how to survive to the very end of school chart. I was pretty put out. How did you work out what it was? I was keeping it so secret I haven't even put it in the display. He tapped his nose. Then he reached in his desk, took out the security screen, and set it up on the desk. Just as I thought he'd finished, he lifted a hidden flap set on his side, and then another, and then slid a panel round. Mirrors! Sideways periscope action! Cunning! Worked a treat! If I were broke, I'd sell this boy to Secret Services. I drew the how-to book out of my desk. So there's no point in hiding it any longer? Not really, no. I handed it over. I hope it helps, Joe. He took it and stared at it the same way he'd stared at the medal in his hand. Opening it, he turned the pages one by one. I had a sudden vision of all the squares I'd spent so much time counting and measuring and setting out, gradually being filled with bright, brilliant colours that steadily and cheerfully spread across each page from start to end. On the back cover, I'd written in block capitals, "And now feel free to get on with what you're really good at all day." I'd been determined to get those magic "you're really good at" words into the book somewhere. He looked so happy. I don't even have to use felt pen to fill it in, he mused. I could glue a square and sprinkle it with glitter or dried leaves or, I see it's going to be mess as usual around here. But he wasn't listening. He'd looked up to see the parents pouring in. Mum, Dad, quick, over here. They hadn't got halfway across the room before he was bragging. Mum, I won a prize, a real prize. Look, it's a medal. I thought his mother was going to burst with pride. And Mr. Gardner took the medal from his son's hand and inspected it reverently. Your great-great-granny won one just the same. How long has Miss Tate been teaching? 1,000 years? Now Joe was thrusting the how-to book under his parents' noses. And look what Howard's given me, to keep me going. I crept away before the Gardners kissed me. I wasn't expecting my parents, because a whole lot earlier in the term I'd noticed all the notes from school were clearly addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Chester. Who were they? And I'd felt justified in dropping them straight in the bin. And I was halfway right. My dad did hear a rumour of the open day while he was in Harvey's delicatessen, but he couldn't leave his meal foy unattended any longer in the oven, so he couldn't make it. And Mum was slipped the wink by the van driver, who wanted an excuse to come back earlier. But when she told someone at the door her name was Mrs. Howard, she was sent off to quite another room and was delighted with the work she saw. Didn't you notice that I wasn't there? Of course I noticed. It's just I thought that you were embarrassed because of that beautiful essay that you wrote. What beautiful essay? My favourite book ever, 6 Little Peppers and How They Grew. I didn't get off scot-free, though. The van driver found his way back to our room, and he took a great interest in my work. "Excellent, Chester," he kept saying as he leafed through my books. "You've tried really hard here, I can tell. And this piece is good too. Yes, I can see you've made considerable effort." He went up to Miss Tate then, to tell her all he'd been doing for the last 100 years, and that even though I could clearly do with a little more practice with division, on the whole he thought I was doing really well. "Oh yes," Miss Tate said, "though I admit his how-to book was quite a disappointment." "Yes, I agree. I do think he took a bit of a liberty with the spirit of the project. Quite naughty, in fact. Well, never mind. Most of the rest of his work is up to scratch." "Oh yes," said Miss Tate. "We're all very proud of Howard." The van driver looked a bit baffled. "I was talking about Chester here." "Chester?" Miss Tate looked thoroughly confused. But rather than worry the lady who had given him the happiest days of his life, the van driver moved away. I could have stayed to explain things, but Flora needed a spot of help carrying her new Wheel of Fortune out to the van. On the way down the steps, I asked about something that had been preying on my mind. "Did Joe give you a model to vote for me?" She looked me calmly in the eye over the arrow of opportunity. "No." "He did give you a model, though, didn't he?" "Yes." "And you did vote for me?" "Yes." "Because he asked you?" "No," she said, and then because she could tell that I didn't really believe her. "But maybe because he did explain how very much you'd helped him." I thought about it while she went off to ask the van driver if he'd mind dropping the Wheel of Fortune off at her house after we'd been back to Joe's, and then bringing everything she owned back to the gardener's in fair exchange. And I decided that if Joe had gone to all that trouble to explain to everyone, then I must have been really helpful. I must have deserved the prize. I ought to tell Miss Tate my real name again sometime, I suppose, if we stay in this God-forsaken dump very much longer. Then again, maybe I won't. Howard is nicer than Chester, after all. And when you think about it, Howard's happier.